The sky above Lithera burned orange and red as another city fell. Councillor Marin stood at the window of the emergency bunker, her soft blue skin flickering with dim light. Her people, the Velith, glowed when they felt strong emotions. Right now, every Velith on the planet glowed with fear. The Kethrak had come 3 days ago. Their ships had blocked out the stars, thousands of dark shapes hanging in orbit like hungry predators. The Velith had no real military. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers. They had believed that their alliance with the Galactic Harmony Pact would protect them. They had been wrong. Marin turned to face the emergency council. 12 frightened faces looked back at her. "Have we received any response?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Communications Officer Taylor checked her console for the 100th time. Her glow was almost gone, faded to a dull gray. The Drenari say they cannot spare ships. The Vorath claim their fleet is too far away. The Malagath. She paused, her voice breaking. The Malagath say they will send thoughts and prayers. "Thoughts and prayers," repeated Elder Saurus. He was the oldest member of the council, nearly 400 years old. "We gave the Malagath medicine when the plague struck their colonies. We shared our food when their harvests failed. And they sent us thoughts and prayers." Marin closed her eyes. Outside, she could hear the distant thunder of Kethrak dropships entering the atmosphere. Soon, the ground troops would come. The Kethrak were not like the Velith. They were tall, armored beings with sharp claws and sharper teeth. They conquered because they enjoyed it. They destroyed because they could. "Send the signal again," Marin said. "Send it everywhere. Send it to every corner of the galaxy. Someone must help us." Taylor hesitated. "Counselor, if we broadcast on all frequencies, the signal might reach." "Reach where?" "The Rim. The quarantine zone." The room went silent. Every species in the galaxy knew about the quarantine zone. It was a region of space that civilized beings did not enter. Not because of monsters or ancient weapons, but because of something far more terrifying. The Deathworlders lived there. Deathworlders came from planets that should not support intelligent life. Worlds with crushing gravity, poison atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and endless natural disasters. The creatures that evolved on such worlds were tough, adaptable, and dangerous. Most Deathworlder species were primitive, still fighting among themselves. But one species had reached the stars: humanity. The galaxy watched humanity with careful fear. Humans came from a planet called Earth, a world where the water was poison, the air carried disease, the ground shook without warning, and the weather could kill in 100 different ways. The humans themselves were persistence predators, creatures that chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill most species 3 times over. They ate foods that would poison a Velith instantly. They drank a substance called alcohol for fun. And yet, the galaxy knew little else about them. Humanity had been contacted 50 years ago and immediately quarantined. Too dangerous, the Galactic Council had decided. Too unpredictable. Let them stay in their corner of space. "Send it," Marin said. Elder Sorvis grabbed her arm. "Counselor, you cannot be serious. If the humans come, at least someone came." Marin pulled her arm free. "Look outside, Elder. The Kethrak are burning our world. Our allies have abandoned us. Our children are dying. I will take any help I can get, even from Deathworlders." Taylor's fingers trembled over the controls. Then she pressed the button. The signal went out, spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. It was a simple message, repeated in every known language. "We are the Velith of Lethera. We are under attack. Please help us. Anyone, please." The message traveled through Harmony Pact space, where a dozen species heard it and did nothing. It traveled through neutral zones, where traders shook their heads sadly and changed course to avoid the conflict. It traveled through empty space, past dead worlds and dying stars. And then it reached the rim, on a space station orbiting Earth's moon. A communications officer named Lieutenant James Chen was eating his lunch when his console beeped. He frowned at the incoming signal, ran it through the translator, and nearly choked on his sandwich. 15 minutes later, Admiral Kira Vasquez stood in the command center, reading the message on the main screen. She was a small woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had fought in 3 wars and buried 2 husbands. Nothing surprised her anymore. "What do we know about the Velith?" she asked. "Almost nothing, ma'am," replied her intelligence officer. "They're a peaceful species. No military to speak of. They've never made contact with us. And the attackers? The Kethrak Dominion, conquerors. They've taken over 40 star systems in the last century. Aggressive, well-armed, and they don't take prisoners." Vasquez stared at the screen. The message played again. "Please help us. Anyone. Please." "The Galactic Harmony Pact?" she asked. "No response from any member species, ma'am. It looks like the Velith's allies are staying home." Captain Rodriguez, Vasquez's second-in-command, stepped forward. "Admiral, this isn't our fight. We don't know these people. The galaxy has made it clear they don't want us involved in their affairs. If we go out there, what? They'll quarantine us harder." Vasquez almost smiled. "We're already the monsters under their beds, Captain. Nothing we do will change that. Then why help them?" Vasquez turned to face her officers. The command center was full of men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. They had trained for wars they hoped would never come. They had prepared for enemies they had never met. "Because they asked," Vasquez said simply. "Because someone is hurting them and no one else will help. Because that's who we are." She walked to the main console and activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice echoed through 300 warships, reaching pilots in their bunks, Marines in their training rooms, and engineers in their workshops. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez. We have received a distress call from a species called the Velith. They are under attack by a hostile force, and their allies have abandoned them. I am ordering an immediate full deployment. All crews report to battle stations. We jump in 6 hours." She paused, looking at the message on the screen one more time. They called for help. "We're gonna answer." Across the human fleet, men and women began to move. Ships powered up their engines. Weapons were loaded. Coordinates were plotted. The Deathworlders were going to war. The human fleet tore through hyperspace like a storm moving between stars. 300 warships traveled in tight formation, their engines burning hot, their crews working without rest. What would take most species a week to prepare, the humans did in 6 hours. Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UN's Defiance, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main viewport. Around her, officers called out status reports, checked weapon systems, and coordinated with other ships. The noise never stopped, but Vasquez found it comforting. It was the sound of humans doing what they did best, moving fast and hitting hard. "Admiral, we're receiving updated intelligence from our long-range probes," Lieutenant Chen reported. "The Kethrak have 1,200 ships in orbit around Lithura. Ground forces have taken 3 of the 5 major cities. Casualty estimates for the Velith are significant." "How significant?" Chen hesitated. 2 million dead in the first 3 days, ma'am. Mostly civilians." The bridge went quiet. Vasquez felt anger rise in her chest, cold and sharp. 2 million people. 2 million innocent beings killed because a stronger species wanted their planet. Time to arrival? 4 hours, ma'am. Good. All ships, increase speed to maximum. I want us there yesterday. Across the fleet, Crews pushed their ships harder. Engineers watched temperature gauges climb into dangerous zones. Pilots drank coffee and energy supplements to stay awake. Marines checked their weapons again and again, memorizing the faces of their squad members. Some wrote letters home. Others prayed. A few just sat in silence, thinking about what was coming. In the medical bay of the UNS Mercy, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo prepared her surgical teams for mass casualties. She had seen combat before, but never against an unknown enemy. She didn't know what Kethrak weapons would do to human bodies. She didn't know what Velith biology looked like. She prepared for everything. We might be treating aliens for the first time, she told her staff. A different biology, different needs. Stay flexible. Stay calm. And remember, if it bleeds, we can probably help it. Meanwhile, on Lithora, the Velith were dying. Councillor Marin had moved the emergency council to an underground bunker beneath the capital city. The bunker was meant to survive natural disasters, not orbital bombardment. Every few minutes, the ceiling shook as another bomb fell somewhere above them. The Kethrak have landed troops in the Eastern District, reported a young officer, his glow flickering with terror. They're moving toward the refugee centers. Marin closed her eyes. The refugee centers held hundreds of thousands of Velith who had fled from the fallen cities. Children, elderly, families. They had nowhere else to go. Do we have any forces to send? A few hundred volunteers with civilian weapons. They won't last long. Send them anyway. Buy the refugees time to evacuate deeper underground. It was a death sentence, and everyone in the room knew it. But what else could they do? Then Taylor's console made a sound no one had heard before. A new signal coming from outside the system. She stared at the screen, her glow brightening with shock. Counselor, ships are approaching. Many ships. They're not Kethrak. The Harmony Pact? Our allies finally came? No. Taylor looked up, her eyes wide. The signal identifies them as human. The room went silent. Then Elder Sorvis spoke, his voice trembling. The Deathworlders. They actually came. Before anyone could respond, a new transmission came through. The voice was female, speaking Velith with a strange accent, clearly using a translator. Attention, Velith forces. This is Admiral Kira Vasquez of the United Nations Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Please respond with enemy positions and your current status. Marin grabbed the communicator with shaking hands. Admiral Vasquez, this is Councillor Marin of the Velith High Council. The Kethrak have orbital superiority and ground forces in 3 cities. They outnumber you 4-1. Are you certain you want to engage? There was a pause. Then the human admiral's voice came back, calm and steady. Counselor, we didn't travel across the galaxy to watch. Point us at the enemy. In orbit, the Kethrak Dominion detected the approaching fleet. Supreme Commander Varketh watched the sensor readings with amusement. His ships filled the space around Lithora like a wall of steel and fire. He had conquered 30 worlds personally. He feared nothing. What is this? He asked his sensor officer. Another species trying to play hero? They identify as humans, Supreme Commander. From the quarantine zone. Varketh laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. The Deathworlders? I've heard stories about them. Primitive creatures from a poison world. They probably don't even have proper weapons. They have 300 ships, Commander, and I have 1,200. This will be entertaining. Varketh leaned forward in his command chair, his yellow eyes gleaming. Open a channel. Let me speak to their leader. The communication link connected. On the screen appeared a small human female with gray hair and a face made of stone. Varketh found her appearance almost comical. She was tiny compared to a Kethrak warrior. Little human, Varketh said, showing his teeth. You have made a grave mistake coming here. The Velethar are our prey. This is not your concern. Leave now, and I might let you live." Admiral Vasquez stared at him through the screen. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but something in it made Varkith's crew shift uncomfortably. "I'm going to give you one chance, Commander. Take your ships and leave this system. Release any prisoners. Never return to Veleth space. Do this, and we won't hunt you down." Varkith burst out laughing. "You threaten me? With 300 ships against my 1,200? Your species truly is insane." "Maybe," Vasquez replied. "But we're also very, very good at violence. Last chance." Varkith cut the communication. "Destroy them," he ordered. "Destroy them all." The Kethrak fleet began to move, hundreds of warships turning toward the approaching humans. Weapons powered up. Fighters launched from carrier bays. The Kethrak had never lost a battle against a smaller force. They didn't expect to start now. On the Defiance, Vasquez watched the enemy fleet arrange itself for battle. She felt no fear. She had been in impossible situations before. Humanity had faced extinction more than once and survived every time. "All ships," she announced, her voice reaching every human in the fleet. "Battle stations. Weapons free. And remember why we're here." She paused, looking at the planet below, where millions of innocent beings were waiting to die. Those people called for help. Their friends abandoned them. We're all they have left. So let's show this galaxy what Deathworlders can do. The human fleet charged forward, 300 ships against 1,200, and the battle for Lithara began. The first Kethrak ships exploded before they understood what was happening. Human weapons traveled faster and hit harder than anything the Dominion had faced before. Plasma cannons tore through shields. Railguns punched holes in armor. Missiles found weak points with terrible accuracy. Supreme, Commander Varkith watched 3 of his cruisers die in the first 30 seconds. His amusement turned to confusion, then to something he had not felt in decades: concern. How are they hitting so hard? He demanded. "Their ships are smaller than ours." "Unknown, Commander. Their weapon technology is different, more efficient." "Then close the distance. Our numbers will overwhelm them." The Kethrak fleet surged forward, hundreds of ships moving to surround the human formation. It was a strategy that had worked countless times before. Surround the enemy, crush them from all sides, leave no survivors. But the humans did not fight like other species. Admiral Vasquez watched the enemy formation on her tactical display. She saw what the Kethrak were trying to do. She smiled. "All ships, execute pattern Delta. Let them come close." The human fleet did something that confused every Kethrak commander watching. Instead of retreating or spreading out, they tightened their formation and charged directly into the enemy. They were not trying to escape the encirclement. They were diving into it. "They're insane," Varkith muttered. "They're actually insane." Then the humans reached close combat range, and the real nightmare began. The destroyer Ein Sarajevo found itself surrounded by 5 Kethrak ships. Captain Maria Santos knew her vessel was outgunned. She didn't care. She turned her ship directly toward the largest enemy cruiser and accelerated to maximum speed. "All hands, prepare for impact." "It's been an honor." The Sarajevo hit the Kethrak cruiser at full speed, tearing through its hull like a bullet through flesh. Both ships exploded together, but the Sarajevo's crew had already launched their escape pods. Santos was pulled from the wreckage 20 minutes later, alive and swearing in 3 languages. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with reckless aggression. They rammed. They collided. They fired at point-blank range where their own ships took damage from the explosions. A Kethrak captain watched a human frigate, badly damaged and on fire, turn and charge his vessel rather than retreat. "Why won't they run?" He screamed at his crew. Any sane species would run. The frigate crashed into his ship's engine section. Both vessels died together. But the real horror for the Kethrak came when the boarding parties arrived. Human Marines wore powered armor that made them look like metal giants. They used breaching pods to punch through enemy hulls, entering ships through holes they made themselves. Then they fought room by room, corridor by corridor, killing everything in their path. Sergeant James Walker led his squad through a Kethrak carrier. The aliens were bigger than humans, with claws and teeth designed for killing. But the Kethrak had evolved on a peaceful world. They had never faced a predator like humanity. Walker took a claw strike to his chest that cracked his armor and broke 3 ribs. He shot the Kethrak warrior in the face and kept moving. Another Marine, Private Chun, lost her left arm to an enemy blade. She switched her rifle to her right hand and continued fighting until the medics dragged her to safety. The Kethrak could not understand what they were facing. These small, soft creatures should have been easy prey. Instead, they fought like demons. They took wounds that would kill a Kethrak and kept standing. They showed no fear, no hesitation. They just kept coming. On the Kethrak flagship, Supreme Commander Varkith received reports from across the fleet. Ships lost. Boarding parties overwhelming his crews. His numerical advantage meant nothing against enemies who refused to die. A human prisoner was brought to the bridge. He was young, barely 20 years old, with blood on his face and a broken arm. His armor was shattered, and he had been captured when his breaching pod malfunctioned. Varkith approached the prisoner, towering over him. "What are you?" he demanded. "Why do you fight like this?" "We have done nothing to you. The Velith are not your people." The human looked up at him. Despite his injuries, despite being surrounded by enemies, he grinned. "You hurt people who couldn't fight back," the Marine said. "We take that personally." "That makes no sense. You're dying for strangers." "Yeah, well..." The Marine coughed blood and kept smiling. "That's kind of our thing." On the surface of Lythra, the Velith watched the battle through whatever sensors still worked. They saw human ships destroying enemy vessels twice their size. They saw boarding pods attached to Kethrak carriers and disable them from within. They saw a species they had been taught to fear fighting and dying to save them. Counselor, Marin watched a human destroyer take a direct hit that tore away half its hull. Any other species would abandon ship. Instead, the destroyer turned and rammed the enemy vessel that had wounded it, destroying both ships. The human escape pods launched seconds before impact. "They're insane," Elder Sorvis whispered. "The Deathworlders are completely insane." "Yes," Marin replied, tears running down her face. "And they came for us anyway." In orbit, the battle reached its turning point. The Kethrak had lost 400 ships. The humans had lost 80. But more importantly, the Kethrak had lost something they could not replace: their confidence. They had never fought an enemy like this. They had never faced creatures who treated death as an acceptable price for victory. They had never met a species that fought harder when wounded, that became more dangerous when cornered, that simply refused to stop. Admiral Vasquez watched the enemy fleet begin to waver. She had seen this before in human history. The moment when a superior force realizes that winning will cost more than they're willing to pay. "All ships, press the attack. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet surged forward, and the Kethrak formation began to crack. Supreme Commander Varkith made a decision he had never made in his entire career. He looked at the tactical display, at his dying fleet, at the human ships that kept coming no matter how many were destroyed. "All ships retreat. Full withdrawal from the system." His officers stared at him in shock. The Kethrak Dominion did not retreat. They had never retreated. Now, Varkith screamed. "Before they kill us all, The Kethrak fleet turned and ran, leaving behind the wreckage of 500 ships and the bodies of countless warriors. They fled from a force 1/4 their size, defeated by creatures half their height. On the Defiance, Admiral Vasquez watched the enemy retreat. She did not celebrate. There was too much work left to do. All ships, hold position. Don't pursue. Medical teams, prepare for mass casualties. Ground forces, begin landing operations. We need to help the survivors. She looked down at Lithara, at the burning cities, and the terrified people waiting below. Let's finish what we started. The Kethrak ground forces surrendered within hours of their fleet's retreat. Without orbital support, without reinforcements coming, they knew they were trapped. Human Marines accepted their surrender with professional calm, though many had to resist the urge for revenge after seeing what the invaders had done to Velith cities. The capital city of Lithara was in ruins. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were now piles of broken stone. Streets that had been filled with light and music were covered in ash and blood. The beautiful gardens that the Velith had tended for generations were burned to nothing, but the people survived. Millions of them, hiding in underground shelters, in caves, in basements. They emerged slowly, blinking at the sky, expecting to see Kethrak ships. Instead, they saw human vessels, scarred from battle but still flying. They saw human shuttles landing in the streets, bringing food, medicine, and engineers. Councilor Marin walked through the streets of her destroyed capital with Admiral Vasquez at her side. The human admiral was smaller than she had expected, barely reaching Marin's shoulder. But there was something in her eyes that made her seem much larger. "I don't know how to thank you," Marin said, her voice breaking. "You saved us. You saved millions of my people, and we have nothing to offer you in return." Vasquez shook her head. "You don't owe us anything. We didn't do this for payment. Then why? We've never met before. Your galaxy has quarantined you. We did nothing when they isolated your people. Why would you help us?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. They passed a group of human soldiers digging through rubble, searching for survivors. One of them pulled a Velith child from the wreckage, crying and scared but alive. The soldier held the child gently, carefully, like she was the most precious thing in the universe. "Because that's what you do," Vasquez finally said. "When someone is hurting, you help them. It doesn't matter if you know them. It doesn't matter if they can pay you back. You help because it's right." Marin had never heard such a philosophy from any species in the galaxy. The Harmony Pact talked about mutual benefit, shared interests, strategic alliances. They helped others when it helped themselves. The idea of helping simply because it was right seemed almost childish. And yet, here were the humans, fighting, bleeding, and dying for strangers. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Harmony Pact finally arrived. A diplomatic flotilla of 15 ships entered the system, flying the flags of the Drenari, the Vorith, and the Malagath. They sent messages of support and sympathy. They offered humanitarian aid and reconstruction assistance. They expressed deep concern for their Velith allies. Ambassador Derrix of the Drenari was the first to shuttle down to the surface. He was a tall being with silver skin and an expression of practiced compassion. He had given speeches of condolence after 100 tragedies. This was simply another one. He found Councilor Marin in the Emergency Command Center, surrounded by human officers, helping coordinate relief efforts. Admiral Vasquez stood nearby, covered in dust from helping clear rubble. "Councilor Marin," Derrix said, spreading his arms in a gesture of friendship. "We came as quickly as we could. The Harmony Pact stands with the Velith people in this difficult time." Marin looked at him. Her glow, which had been warm and grateful when speaking with the humans, turned cold and dark. "As quickly as you could," she repeated. "The journey from Drenari space takes 2 days. It has been 6 days since we sent our distress call. Therix's smile flickered. There were complications, political considerations. We had to coordinate with our allies, while my people were dying. Marin's voice was quiet but sharp. While the Kethrak burned our cities and killed our children, you were discussing politics. Now, Counselor, you must understand. I understand perfectly. Marin stood up, and even though she was shorter than the Dranari ambassador, she seemed to tower over him. I understand that we trusted you. We believed in the Harmony Pact. We thought our allies would protect us. She gestured at the human officers around the room. They came. They fought. They died for us. They lost 80 ships and thousands of soldiers, saving people they had never met. Where were you? Derricks looked at Admiral Vasquez, expecting support or at least understanding. He found neither. The human admiral watched him with cold eyes that held no sympathy. The humans should not have interfered, Derricks said, changing tactics. This is Harmony Pact space. The quarantine protocols. The quarantine protocols exist because you fear them. Marin interrupted. You fear them because they are different. Because they are strong. Because they don't follow your rules. She laughed, a sound without any joy. But they came when you didn't. They risked everything for nothing. Other Velith Council members entered the room, followed by officers and citizens who had heard the commotion. They watched their leader face the ambassador of their former allies. The Velith Concordat formally withdraws from the Galactic Harmony Pact, Marin announced. Effective immediately. Therix's face went pale. You can't be serious. Without the pact, you'll have no protection. We already had no protection. Marin's voice echoed through the room. You left us to die. The humans saved us. And you have the arrogance to come here now, after everything is over, and talk about protection. She pointed at the door. Leave. Leave my world. Take your ships and your speeches and your empty promises and leave. The ambassador stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. Then Admiral Vasquez spoke, her voice calm and level. You heard the counselor. I think it's time for you to go. You cannot remove us. You have no authority in this region. I have 200 ships in orbit and 10,000 Marines on the ground. I have exactly as much authority as I need. Vasquez smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Leave now, or I'll escort you out personally. Derricks looked around the room, searching for support. He found none. The Velith looked at him with disgust. The humans looked at him with contempt. Even his own aides seemed. Ashamed Dodd, he left without another word. News of the confrontation spread across the galaxy within hours. The Velith withdrawal from the Harmony Pact was the first in the organization's history. Other species watched with great interest. Species who had their own doubts about their allies. Species who had been abandoned before. That night, Counselor Marin stood with Admiral Vasquez on a balcony overlooking the ruins of her capital. Human workers moved through the streets below, setting up shelters and distributing supplies. Velith and human doctors worked side by side in medical tents. What happens now? Marin asked. Now we help you rebuild. However long it takes. And then? Vasquez looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kethrak were licking their wounds. They would return eventually. Predators always did. Then we make sure this never happens again. Marin was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft but certain. The Velith Concordat formally requests a mutual defense treaty with Earth. We want to be your allies. Real allies. The kind that actually comes when called. Vasquez extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement. Marin had never seen it before, but she understood. She took the human's hand in her own. Welcome to the family, Vasquez said Dodd, and somewhere across the galaxy, Other species began to wonder if maybe they had chosen the wrong friends. The galaxy changed in the months following the Battle of Lithara. It did not change quickly or dramatically. Great events rarely transform the universe overnight. Instead, the change came in small moments, quiet decisions, and careful conversations held in secret. The Velith Treaty with humanity was signed 3 weeks after the battle. It was a simple document, nothing like the complex agreements of the Harmony Pact. 2 species promised to defend each other. No conditions. No escape clauses. No political calculations. Other species watched with interest. Some laughed at the Velith for trusting Deathworlders. Others saw something different. They saw a species that had been betrayed by their friends and saved by strangers. They saw humans who fought and died for people they had never met. They saw a different way of doing things. The Dreth were the first to reach out. Ambassador Kerr, a massive being with stone-gray skin and patient eyes, requested a meeting with Admiral Vasquez. The Dreth had been members of the Harmony Pact for centuries, but they had their own history of abandonment. 20 years ago, a plague had swept through their colonies. The Pact had sent supplies and sympathy. The plague killed 30 million Dreth, while their allies debated how much aid to provide. "We've never forgotten," Kerr told Vasquez. "We stayed with the Pact because we had nowhere else to go. Now there might be another option." The Molokai came next. They were small, quick-moving creatures who had joined the Pact for protection against larger species. Instead, they had become servants, their worlds used as buffer zones, their people treated as expendable. When a Molokai ambassador met with human representatives, she wept. "You really came when called?" She asked. "You really fought for people you didn't know?" "Yes," the human representative said. "Why?" It was the same question Marine had asked. The answer was still the same, because it was right. The Sin joined last. They were an ancient species, among the oldest in the galaxy. They had watched the rise and fall of 100 empires. They had seen the Harmony Pact form and knew it would eventually fail. All alliances based on self-interest eventually failed. But this new thing, this human idea of helping simply because helping was right, that was something they had not seen in 10,000 years. "You may be the most dangerous species in the galaxy," the Sin Elder told Vasquez when they met. "Not because of your weapons or your ships, but because you make other species believe in something." Admiral Vasquez returned to Earth a hero. Crowds filled the streets to welcome the fleet home. Politicians gave speeches. Medals were awarded. The dead were honored. But Vasquez did not celebrate for long. She knew that the galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do with its new allies and its new reputation. She knew that the Kethrak would return eventually, hungry for revenge. She knew that other predator species would test this new alliance. Looking for weakness dot at a memorial service for the fallen, she stood before thousands of soldiers, sailors, and marines. Behind her were the names of every human who had died at Lithara. 80 ships, 4,000 people, all gone. "They called for help," Vasquez said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "People we had never met, people who had never helped us, people who had been taught to fear us. They called for help because they had no one else to call." She paused, looking at the faces before her. Young men and women who would carry the memory of this battle for the rest of their lives. And we answered. Not because we had to. Not because we would gain something. We answered because that's who we are. That's who we've always been. She thought of the Velith child pulled from the rubble. She thought of the Marines who had taken wounds that would kill most species and kept fighting. She thought of the Sarajevo, turning into the enemy and buying time with her death. Some species in this galaxy believe that strength means taking what you want. They believe that power exists to dominate others. They look at the universe and see things to conquer. Vasquez shook her head. They're wrong. True strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. True power is lifting others up, not pushing them down. That's what we showed them at Lithara. That's what we'll keep showing them. She raised her hand in salute to the fallen. The galaxy is watching us. They're waiting to see what kind of power we'll become. Some hope we'll fail. Some fear we'll succeed. But it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what we do. Her voice rose, filling the memorial hall. We will not become conquerors. We will not become oppressors. We will be something the galaxy has forgotten could exist. A species that protects the innocent, that defends the helpless, that answers when called. She lowered her hand. Let them watch. Let them learn. When the helpless cry out, the Deathworlders come. And we do not come alone anymore. The crowd erupted in cheers. But Vasquez was already thinking about the future. In the following years, the alliance grew. It was called the Compact of Stars, though humans usually just called it the Compact. Unlike the Harmony Pact, membership was not about trade deals or strategic positioning. There was only one requirement. When an ally called for help, you came. Some species joined quickly. Others took time. A few never joined at all, preferring the safety of isolation or the familiar corruption of the pact. But the compact grew anyway. One species at a time, one promise at a time. The Kethrak tested the alliance 3 years later, attacking a Molokai colony world. This time, they faced a combined fleet. Human, Velith, Dreth, and Molokai ships fighting together. The Kethrak retreated within hours. The message was clear. Attack one member of the Compact, face them all. Councillor Marin, now High Chancellor of the Velith, often thought about the day the humans arrived. She remembered standing in the bunker, listening to her allies make excuses while her people died. She remembered the moment the human signal came through, the voice of a stranger promising help. You changed everything, she told Vasquez during a diplomatic visit years later. You didn't just save my people. You showed the galaxy that another way was possible. Vasquez shrugged, uncomfortable with praise as always. We just did what anyone should do, but no one else did. That's the point. Marin smiled. The galaxy feared you because you came from a death world. They thought you were monsters. And now? Now they fear you because you proved them wrong. Because you showed that strength and kindness can exist together. Because you gave hope to species who had forgotten what hope felt like. She looked down at the stars, at the worlds that were no longer alone. They called you Deathworlders. They quarantined you. They tried to keep you contained. She laughed softly. They should have known better. You cannot contain hope. The stars, once cold and indifferent, now held something new. Not just hope, but a promise. A promise that when the helpless called, someone would answer. A promise that strength would be used to protect, not to dominate. A promise that even in the darkest corner of the galaxy, no one would ever be truly alone again. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.